Our top focus this hour is on the GST bonanza announced by the Indian government that has kicked in. Manufacturers and dealers are now legally required to pass on GST rate reductions to consumers across the country. However, history and market dynamics now suggest that this does not always happen automatically. As consumer, you need to be aware of how companies can even absorb these benefits instead of passing them over to consumers, and what one can do to ensure you get the savings one is entitled to. Now, the most common way companies avoid passing on benefit is by increasing the base price of the product before applying the reduced GST rate. For example, if a product originally cost 100 rupees and had a 28% GST on it, the final price was 128 rupees. If the GST drops to 18% now, a manufacturer can raise the base price to 108 rupees. The final price with the new 18% GST is still 128 rupees. So you see no change while the company pockets the 8 rupees difference. This is a classic profiteering tactic. Another method is to simply cut down on discounts and promotional offers. If a dealer was previously offering a 5,000 rupee discount to attract customers, they can now simply withdraw that offer, claiming the price cut is due to the GST reduction. However, in reality, the price you pay remains the same, but the manufacturer or dealer has absorbed the tax benefit. Finally, some businesses may simply delay the price reduction, citing issues with inventory, supply chain, or even updating their billing systems. They will continue to sell old stock at the higher price, pocketing the difference in price. The government has an anti-profiteering clause in the GST law, and there's also a mechanism for consumers to file a complaint. That is the case, but your first line of defense. Before you buy, do your research, check the pre-GST price and calculate what the new price should be. And with that, one has to be wary of dealers who are vague about the price breakdown. If a dealer claims that prices have not changed, ask for a detailed invoice that shows the base price and the GST components separately. Also, do not assume that a GST cut will automatically translate to a cheaper product. It's your awareness and vigilance that are crucial to ensuring that the benefit of tax reduction reaches you, the final consumer. And joining us on the broadcast is Jayant Krishna. He's Senior Fellow, Center for Strategic and International Studies. Mr. Krishna has also led key initiatives of the Indian Prime Minister's Skill India mission as CEO and COO. Mr. Krishna, appreciate you joining us on the broadcast. Now, the rejig in rates taxes the better off more while easing the burden on those bottom of the pyramid. If first up, you can talk to us about what are the immediate bottlenecks for the government and the traders with respect to the revenue and implementation of the tax rejig.
See, whenever new GST rates and slabs are, finalized, there are bound to be some bottlenecks. But, I do not totally agree to the apprehension that you spoke about before introducing me. When you said that, manufacturers will absorb the GST benefit and not pass it on to the customer. See, we are living in a day and age which is not a seller's market. It is a buyer's market, right? There's a competition. People have a choice of brands, right? So let's look at what are the products which are going to be affected right now, right? I mean, daily essentials is one category which will be affected big time, right? When I say big time, what I mean is FMCG products generally, their GST has gone down from 18% to 5%, right? I mean, this is one product category where there's so much of competition. There are n number of brands. So if one manufacturer does not pass on the benefit of GST to the customer, others would do it. And it is very, very difficult in today's competitive age to create cartels and behave as one lobby of all manufacturers put together and not to pass on the GST rates, because then the government can come down heavily on them, and there'll be somebody who will break that cartel and come out in order to garner a greater market share. So FMCG products, butter, ghee and cheese, which comes from 12% to 5%, salted snacks also 12 to 5%. Baby products, utensils, they've all come from 12 to 5%. So I personally do not feel that, beyond a few days, companies can stick to the old price. They'll have to pass on the entire benefit of the GST reduction to the consumer. Healthcare products, look at life insurance and health insurance, right? Used to be 18% GST, it has become 0%. Now there's so many companies, right? And they're fighting for market shares. So I think if one company decides not to pass on the benefit of GST to the customer, others will come out and they'll pass on and they'll be able to garner a greater market share. So I personally feel all categories, education, farmer products like tractors, biopesticides, and drip irrigation, so on and so forth, automobiles where up to a limit, up to certain number of cc's in petrol and diesel, anything which is below that, the GST rate has gone down from 28% to 18%, right? And it's a hell of a lot of a competitive sector. So I think this apprehensions of manufacturers absorbing the GST benefit and not passing out to the customer, I don't think this would sustain at all, and eventually everybody will have to pass on the benefit, because it's a buyer's market and they have a choice of brands and choice of products today.
Yes, Mr. Krishna, just to continue that very point regarding the malpractices that could happen, which is precisely why the government has an anti-profiteering clause in the GST law. If you can also elaborate once again about this caveat that's been introduced when it comes to this clause regarding the grievance mechanism for the Indian consumers.
So I think any consumer, who finds that the benefit of GST has not been applied and artificially the prices have been jacked up to come to the pre-GST slab change end price for the customer, can escalate it, to the n number of authorities in government to whom it can be escalated. It could be escalated to the company itself. If companies do not respond, it could be escalated to the government, and government has every right to go to those companies and ask questions.
Yes.
Although government cannot stop a company from increasing the prices, if they want to. But the fact is, eventually they'll all have to align. They'll all have to fall in line, and these benefits. Look at the product categories which are there: air conditioners, televisions, dishwashers, cement. There are n number of players today, and I don't see this possibility, of a price benefit not getting passed. And if at all it happens, they could be escalated to the companies themselves if they don't respond favorably. There are n number of escalations available within the government machinery itself.
Yes, Mr. Krishna, point taken. But also, if you can talk to us about the apprehensions flagged by certain state governments who maintain that this could even lead to potential revenue loss. Do you believe that this is a myopic viewpoint? Because at the end of the day, it leaves more disposable income in the hands of people, thereby catapulting demand in the country.
So, Samiksha, I think Government of India as a whole has estimated that they could have a revenue implication of almost 48,000 crore. But this is based on the fact that, the consumption would remain at the 2014 level itself. But, all over the world, it has been seen when there is such a significant reduction in any form of, in any duty or levy, like GST happens. There is a demand elasticity, and demand typically goes up. Look at, there'll be substantive, reduction in many of the consumer goods and many of the daily goods. And I think if international practices are international trends are any indication, I'm sure the demand, overall demand would go up for almost all the categories which are affected by GST. For example, let's talk about health and life insurance. What is the penetration? Very, very small. Just 5 to 7% of the country's population is insured, for life or for health, right? So I think once they have this benefit of almost 18 to 20% price reduction, right? The premium they'll have to pay would be lower by that amount, and market was bound to expand. So I think the elasticity of the demand is such that with such a drastic reduction in GST prices, I think there's bound to, the demand is likely to see a spurt, and therefore the revenue losses would be less. And when you talk about states, I think some states which are consuming states, which are large, which have a large population and large number of consumers, they typically stand to gain more in a GST regime. And as the demand goes up, I don't think they will suffer much. And in any case, there is some talk within the GST Council of if at all some states go for there's a huge revenue implication and the revenues fall post new GST. There's also some provision for center compensating in some form.
Yes, Mr. Jain Krishna, point taken, and of course this comes at a time when the festive season has just kicked in. Remains to be seen the longer run implications, but appreciate you joining us on WION.
Pleasure.
Now, prices of kitchen staples to electronics, from medicines and equipment to even automobiles are now cheaper with new goods and services tax rates coming into effect. Starting today, our correspondent Nikita Singh has sent us this ground report.
Starting today, September 22nd, India is stepping into a new GST regime for electrical appliances. Now, the overall slabs have shrunk to just 5% and 8%. What this means for consumers is a considerable drop in prices for certain big-ticket home appliances like air conditioners, dishwashers, televisions above 32 inches. What this means is earlier these appliances fell in the 28% luxury segment and are now part of the 18% bracket. Certainly good news for families looking at upgrading their homes ahead of the festival season, and this move is also expected to increase demand for a couple of these electrical appliances.